The alarm screamed through every corridor of the Harmony Dawn. Red lights flashed across the metal walls as the ship shook violently. Doyen Kim gripped the sides of his workstation and watched the main screen with trained calm. Debris had torn through the engine room. They were going down. All crew to escape pods. Captain Reeves shouted over the communication system. This is not a drill. Abandon ship immediately. Doyen ran through the tilting hallways. His boots made heavy sounds on the floor. Other crew members rushed past him, some screaming, some silent with fear. He reached Pod Bay 7 and threw himself inside the nearest capsule. The door sealed shut with a hiss. Through the small window he saw Tala, the crystalline alien scientist struggling toward another pod. Her many eye stalks waved in panic. Then his pod launched. The force pressed him back into the seat. His pod spun as it fell away from the dying ship. Through the window he caught glimpses of the planet below. Vex 7, he had read the reports. Class 9 death world. Nothing lived there that the Galactic Union knew of. The atmosphere could kill most species in minutes. The temperature swings were extreme. Predators the size of trucks roamed the surface. His pod hit the atmosphere hard. Fire surrounded the small capsule as friction heated the hull. The heat shields glowed orange, then white. Doyen felt sweat run down his face. He checked his harness twice, then gripped the armrests. This was going to be rough. The parachute deployed with a violent jerk. The pod swung wildly under the canopy. Doyen saw the ground rushing up to meet him. Rocky terrain, purple vegetation, and a cliff face. The impact was brutal. Metal screamed. The pod bounced once, twice, then slid across rough ground before slamming into a boulder. Everything went dark for a moment. Doyen opened his eyes. His head hurt. He touched his forehead and his fingers came away with blood. Nothing felt broken, though. He had been lucky. The pod was tilted at an angle, smoke rising from cracks in the hull. He hit the manual release. The door fell open with a crash. Hot air rushed in. It smelled of sulfur and something sharp that made his nose itch. Doyen climbed out carefully and stood on solid ground. He was alive. He took a moment to breathe and look around. The landscape was like nothing on Earth. The sky was a strange orange color. 2 suns hung in the sky, one larger than the other. Purple and black plants grew in twisted shapes. Rocks jutted from the ground at odd angles. In the distance, he could see mountains with smoke rising from their peaks. Volcanoes, probably active. He heard a sound like thunder, but the sky was clear. Then the ground shook slightly under his feet. Earthquakes. This planet was geologically active. He would need to be careful where he built shelter. Doyen turned back to his pod. The crash had destroyed most of it, but he needed to salvage what he could. He pulled out the emergency kit, a thermal blanket, some basic tools, and a half-broken communication beacon. The beacon's screen flickered weakly. Maybe he could fix it later. He found a water container, a small knife, and a fire starter that looked damaged. Better than nothing. He checked his watch. 3 hours until sunset. Based on the planetary data he remembered, the temperature was hot now, maybe 40 degrees Celsius. At night it would drop to -40 or worse. He needed shelter, and he needed it fast. Doyen scanned the area with the eyes of someone trained to survive. His instructors back on Earth had drilled him in hostile environment survival. Russia, Antarctica, the Amazon, the Australian outback. He had trained in all of them. This was worse, but the principles remained the same. Water, shelter, fire, food. In that order. He spotted something useful. A cliff face about 200 meters away had a natural overhang. Below it he could hear running water, a stream. He walked toward it, watching where he stepped. The purple plants had thorns. Some leaked a clear liquid that might be poisonous. The stream was real. Water flowed over smooth stones. Doyen knelt and studied it. The water was clear. He could see small creatures swimming in it. That was a good sign. If things lived in it, it probably would not kill him instantly. He would still need to purify it before drinking. High above, hidden in orbit, Tala watched through the damaged probe network. Her crystalline body pulsed with distress colors. Beside her in the wrecked main ship, Nexim, the aquatic pilot, floated in his emergency moisture tank. He cannot survive, Nexim said, his voice bubbling through the water. Look at the temperature readings. Look at the atmospheric composition. 6 hours, maybe less. Vor, the insectoid scientist, clicked his mandibles nervously. The protocol says we wait for rescue, but that human will be dead long before help arrives. We should at least watch. Document his final hours for the family. Tala's eye stalks focused on the screen. Doyen was gathering things from the ground. Branches, rocks, plants. What is he doing? She asked. Down on the surface, Doyen worked quickly. He broke branches from the strange trees, careful to avoid the ones that leaked acid. He had already tested one by accident. The sap had burned his finger, but not badly. His skin was thick enough to handle it for a brief touch. He gathered dry grass and fibrous plants that could be woven. He paced out the area under the overhang. About 3 meters deep, 4 meters wide, the rock ceiling was high enough for him to stand. Good. The opening faced east, away from where he had seen dark clouds gathering on the horizon. The wind came from the west. That meant weather was coming. Doyen began to build. He planted the thickest branches into the ground at an angle, creating a frame. He wove the thinner branches between them, making walls. He had done this a dozen times in survival training. The structure did not need to be perfect. It needed to work. He found mud near the stream. He mixed it with ash from his burned pod, creating a paste. This he smeared over the woven walls. It would dry hard and provide insulation. The thermal blanket became a roof liner, held in place with more branches and mud. Impossible, Vor whispered in the ship above. He is touching those plants with his bare hands. The sap should be burning through his skin. Human skin is different, Tala said, pulling up data files. Thicker, multiple layers, higher pain tolerance than most species. But still, this should hurt him more. Doyen did feel the burns. His hands stung. But pain was just information. It told him to be careful, not to stop. He kept working. He dug a pit for fire inside the shelter, lining it with stones from the stream. He built a small wall behind the pit to reflect heat forward. He gathered dry materials for kindling. Then he began the hard part. The fire starter from the pod was broken. He would need to make fire the old way. Doyen found a flat piece of wood and a straight stick. He cut a notch in the flat piece. Then he began to spin the stick in the notch, using friction to create heat. His hands moved steadily. Smoke began to rise. He blew gently. A tiny ember glowed in the char. He transferred it to his bundle of dry grass and blew again. Flames appeared. In orbit, 3 aliens watched in complete silence. Nexum's voice finally broke the quiet. He made fire. With his hands. With wood. How? Tala breathed. The sun was setting now. The temperature dropped rapidly. Doyen fed his fire carefully. He had learned long ago that fire was life in hostile places. Too much fuel and it burned out. Too little and it died. You had to respect it, work with it. He sat in his shelter and felt the warmth from the flames. The structure held. The wind outside picked up, making strange sounds across the rocks. Somewhere in the distance, something roared. A big something. Doyen checked his supplies. Not much, but enough for now. He would need to find food tomorrow. Set traps, maybe. There were small animals here. He had seen tracks, for now he was alive. The shelter worked. He had fire and nearby water. That was more than many people had after a crash landing on a death world. He allowed himself a small smile. His instructors would be proud. Or maybe they would just nod and say he did what he was trained to do. Above, Tala made a decision. We record everything. Every moment. The Galactic Union needs to see this. See what? Vor asked. A human dying slowly? No, Tala said, her crystalline body flashing with sudden realization. A Deathworlder surviving on a death world? I think we are about to learn something very important about humans. The night deepened. The temperature fell. But inside a simple shelter made from rocks, mud, and branches, a fire burned steady and warm. The night on Vex 7 was brutal. The temperature dropped so fast that frost formed on the rocks outside Doyen's shelter. He fed the fire throughout the dark hours, dozing lightly between adding wood. His internal clock woke him every hour. It was a skill learned from years of field training. Sleep light, wake fast, stay alive. When the first sun rose, painting the orange sky with streaks of red, Doyen was already awake. He had survived the first night. His shelter had held. The fire had kept him warm enough. His body ached from sleeping on hard ground, but he was alive. That was what mattered. He stepped outside and stretched. His breath made clouds in the cold morning air. The landscape looked different in daylight. He could see more details now. There were animal tracks near the stream. Something with 4 legs and claws. He would need to be careful. Doyen drank water from his container. He had boiled it last night using rocks heated in the fire. An old trick. You heat stones until they are very hot, then drop them in water. The water boils. It killed most harmful things in the water. Not perfect, but better than drinking it straight. His stomach growled. Food was the next priority, but first he needed to improve his shelter. Last night had shown him the weak points. Cold air had leaked in through gaps in the walls. The roof needed more insulation, and he needed a better door to keep heat inside. High above, Tala had not left the monitoring station all night. She had watched Doyen feed the fire every hour with mechanical precision. Nexum floated beside her, equally transfixed. Vor had gone to rest but returned now with morning rations. He survived the night, Vor said as if he could not believe his own words. The temperature reached -43 degrees Celsius. That should have killed him. Look at his thermal readings, Tala pointed at the screen. His body is generating heat, burning stored energy to stay warm. And the fire, the shelter design, had trapped enough heat to create a survivable microclimate. But the effort, Nexum bubbled. The caloric expenditure must be enormous. He needs food. What will he eat? Nothing on that planet is compatible with human biology. We checked the surveys. They watched as Doyen began working on his shelter. He gathered more mud and sealed the gaps in the walls. He cut large leaves from a nearby plant and layered them on the roof for extra insulation. He made a door frame from branches and stretched a piece of his pod's hull across it. It was not airtight, but it would block wind. Then he did something that confused the aliens. He began making things he did not immediately need. He cut a long, straight branch and spent an hour shaping it with his knife. He made it smooth and pointed at one end. A spear. Why is he making weapons? Vor asked. He should be looking for food. He is thinking ahead, Tala said slowly. Humans are planning creatures. He knows there are predators. He is preparing for threats that have not arrived yet. Doyen tested the spear's weight and balance. Good enough. Then he made another tool. He found a Y-shaped branch and cut it to size. He took the elastic cord from his thermal blanket and tied it between the arms of the Y. A sling. Simple but effective. He gathered smooth stones and practiced his aim. 3 shots. 3 hits on a target rock. His accuracy was still good. With weapons made, he turned to food. Doyen walked along the stream, studying the plants and animals. He saw small lizard-like creatures basking on rocks. He watched them for a while. They ate the purple plants. That meant the plants were food for something. But could he eat the lizards? There was only one way to find out. Doyen used his sling and stunned one of the creatures. It was about the size of a rat. He brought it back to his shelter and carefully examined it. The skin looked tough. He used his knife to cut it open, being careful with the organs. Some animals stored poison in their organs. He had learned that the hard way in survival school. The meat inside looked normal enough. Red muscle tissue. Organs that seemed familiar. He cut a small piece and cooked it thoroughly over the fire. Then came the hard part. He took a tiny bite and chewed slowly, tasting everything. Slightly bitter, but not terrible. Now he had to wait. If it was poisonous, he would know in a few hours. He is testing the local fauna, Tala said, amazed. He is conducting biological analysis without any equipment. Just observation and systematic testing. He could die from this, Nexum said. One bite of the wrong thing and his organs could shut down. But he knows that, Vor clicked thoughtfully. Look how little he ate. Just enough to test. If it makes him sick, he will survive. If it does not, he has found food. This is calculated risk. 2 hours passed. Doyen felt fine. No nausea, no stomach pain, no dizziness. The meat was safe. He cooked the rest of the creature and ate it slowly. It was not much food, but it was something. His body needed calories. While he waited for the food to settle, Doyen made a trap. He found a small game trail near his shelter. Animals used the same paths over and over. He made a simple snare from cord salvaged from his pod, a loop on the ground held open by small sticks with a bent sapling for spring tension. When an animal stepped in the loop, the sapling would snap up, tightening the loop. He had made hundreds of these in training. He set 3 more traps at different locations. Then he turned his attention to the communication beacon. It was badly damaged, but maybe he could fix it. Doyen had always been good with electronics. His hands were steady as he carefully opened the casing. The power cell was cracked, but still holding some charge. The transmitter was bent. He straightened it as best he could. The display flickered when he connected a wire differently. There. A weak signal, but it was something. He could not send much, but maybe a distress pulse. He set it to broadcast automatically. In the damaged ship above, an alarm beeped. Tala rushed to the communications panel. I am receiving something. It is Doyen's beacon. He repaired it. The signal was weak and broken, but it carried basic information. Location, life signs, status alive. Tala sent a response, not knowing if he could receive it. Doyen, this is Tala. We read your signal. Help is coming. 14 days minimum. Can you survive that long? The beacon's receiver was too damaged. Doyen did not get the message, but he had succeeded in sending one. That was something. As the second sun reached its peak, Doyen checked his traps. The first was empty. The second was empty. The third held a small furry animal already dead. It looked similar to a rabbit, but with 6 legs and no ears. He reset the trap and brought the animal back to his shelter. Food secured, he turned to improving his living space. He dug a small pit outside the shelter and lined it with stones. A cold storage pit. The ground was cooler below the surface. He could keep meat there for a few days. He made a rack from green wood and positioned it over the fire. A smoking rack. Smoked meat lasted longer. The aliens watched every action with growing fascination. He is not just surviving, Tala said quietly. He is establishing a permanent camp. Look at what he has created in less than 2 days. Shelter, fire, weapons, tools, food storage, food preservation methods. This is not luck. This is systematic knowledge. But how does he know all this? Nexum asked. Is he a survival specialist? An elite soldier? Tala checked Doyen's file. No, he is a standard engineer. This is apparently normal human training. They teach all their people these skills. All of them? Vor could not believe it. Every human knows how to survive like this? According to their military training protocols, yes. Basic survival training is mandatory. This human is not exceptional by their standards. He is average. That statement hung in the air like a weight. Average. This incredible display of adaptation and skill was average for humans. As evening approached, dark clouds gathered on the horizon. Doyen saw them and frowned. A storm was coming. He could feel the pressure change. His shelter would face its first real test. He spent the remaining daylight reinforcing everything. He piled stones against the base of the walls. He secured the roof with additional ties. He brought in extra firewood and stacked it where it would stay dry. He filled his water container. He brought his tools inside. Then he sealed the door as best he could and waited. The storm hit after dark. Wind screamed across the landscape. Rain fell in sheets, then turned to hail. Lightning cracked across the sky. Thunder shook the ground. The temperature dropped again. Inside the shelter, Doyen sat by his fire and waited calmly. The walls shook but held. Water leaked through a few spots in the roof. He positioned his container to catch the drips. The smoke from the fire was pulled up and out by the draft. His design was working. The storm will destroy his shelter, Vor said with certainty. No structure built in 3 days could withstand this. But the hours passed and the shelter stood. Doyen had calculated the angles. He had braced the walls. He had positioned the entrance away from the prevailing winds. Engineering was engineering, whether you built with metal or wood. When morning came, the storm had passed. Doyen emerged to find his camp intact. One wall had a crack. He repaired it with fresh mud. The stream was running higher, muddier. He would wait for it to clear before collecting water. He checked his traps. 2 had animals in them. Good. He was learning the local wildlife patterns. In orbit, Tala made a note in her log. Day 2 survival confirmed. Subject has established stable shelter, secured food sources, and survived. 4 days had passed since the crash. Doyen's camp no longer looked temporary. What had started as a simple shelter was becoming something more. He had expanded the living space by digging into the hillside behind the overhang. The earth was softer there, and the extra room gave him storage space and better insulation. The deeper you went into the ground, the more stable the temperature. He had also built a second structure, a small smokehouse made from rocks and mud, with a low fire pit that produced smoke but little flame. Inside, strips of meat hung from a wooden frame. The smoke would preserve the meat for weeks. It tasted terrible, but it would keep him alive. His water system had improved too. He had built a series of small pools near the stream using rocks and clay. Water flowed into the first pool, where sediment settled to the bottom. Then it flowed to the second pool, where he had layered sand and charcoal. This filtered out more impurities. The third pool was his clean water storage. It was not perfect, but it was better than drinking straight from the stream. Doyen knelt by the stream and splashed cold water on his face. He looked at his reflection in a still pool. His face was thinner now. His beard was growing in. His hands were covered in small cuts and calluses, but his eyes were clear and focused. He was adapting. A sound made him turn quickly, his hand going to the knife at his belt. Something large moved through the purple vegetation about 30 meters away. He could see its shape between the plants, big, very big, the size of a grizzly bear, maybe larger. It had dark scales and a long tail. Doyen stayed very still. The creature sniffed the air. Its head turned toward his camp. Doyen's heart beat faster, but he controlled his breathing. Panic was the enemy. The creature looked at him for a long moment, then turned and walked away. It was not interested. Not yet. Up in the ship, Nexim's voice was tight with fear. That was a Vex predator. Apex species. One of the most dangerous creatures on this planet. Why did it leave? It should have attacked. Look at Doyen's posture, Tala said. He did not run. He did not make sudden moves. And look, his fire has been burning for days. The smoke, the smell. The predator recognizes a dangerous area. Fire means pain to animals. They learn to avoid it. He is using fire as a territorial marker, Vor said slowly, creating a zone of safety through environmental manipulation. Brilliant. Doyen watched until the creature was gone, then returned to his camp. His hands shook slightly now. Adrenaline. He let it pass through him. Fear was useful in small amounts. It kept you alert. But too much fear and you made mistakes. He added wood to his fire and sat down to work on his latest project. He was making a bow, not a simple one, but a real hunting bow. He had found a strong, flexible wood that reminded him of ash. He had been curing the wood over the fire for 2 days, slowly bending it into shape. Now he carved notches at each end for the string. For the string, he had twisted plant fibers together, making a cord strong enough to handle the tension. It had taken hours of work, rolling the fibers on his thigh until they formed a tight rope. His hands were sore from it, but the string was good. He strung the bow and tested the pull. About 20 kilograms of draw weight. Not a war bow, but enough for hunting. Now he needed arrows. He selected straight branches and spent the afternoon shaping them. For arrow points, he napped sharp stones, striking them carefully to create cutting edges. Feathers from a bird-like creature he had caught provided fletching. He split them carefully and tied them to the arrows with fine cordage. By evening, he had 6 arrows. He tested them on a target, a woven grass mat stuffed with dried plants. The first arrow flew true and hit the center. The second was slightly off. He adjusted and tried again. By the time darkness fell, he was hitting the target consistently at 20 meters. Weapon development, Tala noted in her log. Subject has progressed from simple tools to advanced hunting weapons in 4 days. He is not merely surviving. He is establishing dominance over his environment. The next morning brought a new challenge. Doyen woke to a strange sound. The ground was shaking, but not like an earthquake. This was rhythmic. He grabbed his spear and moved to the entrance of his shelter. A herd of large animals was passing through the area. They were massive creatures walking on 6 legs with thick armored hides and long necks. Plant eaters, probably, given their flat teeth and size. There were about 20 of them, from young ones the size of horses to adults as big as elephants. Doyen watched them carefully. He was not worried about them attacking. They were grazers, but where there were prey animals, there were predators. And a herd this size would attract the big hunters. He was right. An hour after the herd passed, he heard the roar. It came from the hills to the west, echoing across the landscape. Something big was following the herd, and it was coming closer to his camp. Doyen made a decision. He could hide and hope the predator did not notice him, or he could make sure the predator knew this was dangerous territory. He chose the second option. He built up his fire until the flames were high and the smoke thick. He gathered dry plants that made acrid smoke when burned and threw them on the flames. He banged rocks together, making sharp cracking sounds. He shouted, his voice carrying across the rocks. "This is my place. Stay away!" The aliens watched in confusion. "What is he doing?" Nexim asked. "He is attracting attention to himself. That is the opposite of survival protocol." "No," Tala said thoughtfully. "He is establishing territory. He is making himself appear dangerous. Look at the fire, the smoke, the noise. To an animal brain, these are threats. He is acting like a large, dangerous creature protecting its den. The roaring stopped. Doyen kept up the noise for another 10 minutes, then gradually let it fade. He maintained the fire but let it settle to normal levels. The predator did not come. It had chosen easier prey. Doyen allowed himself a small smile. Sometimes the best defense was a good bluff. He had learned that dealing with bears in Alaska during training. Make yourself big, make noise, and most animals would rather avoid a fight. Most, not all. He kept his weapons close just in case. Over the next few days, Doyen expanded his camp further. He made a drying rack for plants and was experimenting with which ones were edible. He used the same careful testing method he had used with meat. Small amounts, wait, observe. He found 3 types of plants that did not make him sick. They tasted like bitter grass, but they added variety to his diet. He also made tools he did not strictly need, but that made life easier. A crude saw from a serrated stone, a mallet from a stone bound to a handle, a scraper for cleaning animal hides. He was saving the hides now, scraping them clean and stretching them to dry. They would make better clothing than his torn uniform, but his most important project was pottery. He had found clay near the stream, real clay that could be shaped and hardened. He made simple pots at first, just bowls for storing water and food. He built a firing pit and learned through trial and error what temperature the clay needed. The first 3 pots cracked. The 4th one worked. He is developing technology, Vor said, his voice filled with something like awe. From raw materials, from observation and experimentation, this is how civilizations begin. Tala was thinking the same thing. She had studied the development of spacefaring species. All of them had followed similar patterns. Tool use, then advanced tools, then basic technology. But that process took generations. Doyen was doing it in days because he carried the accumulated knowledge of his entire species in his mind and hands. On day 8, Doyen did something unexpected. He began to make art. He found a flat rock near his shelter and used charcoal from his fire to draw on it. He drew the Harmony Dawn as he remembered it, flying through space. He drew his fellow crew members. He drew Earth. The aliens were confused at first. Why is he wasting time on this? Nexum asked. It serves no survival function. It serves a psychological function, Tala said softly. Humans are social creatures. They need more than food and water. They need meaning, beauty, connection. He is alone, isolated from his kind. This helps him maintain his sense of self. This keeps him human. Doyen also sang sometimes in the evening by his fire, old songs from Earth. Some were in English, some in Korean. The melodies carried across the empty landscape. It was his way of fighting the loneliness, sound against the silence. One evening, as he sat by his fire, Doyen managed to coax more power from his communication beacon. He sent a longer message, not knowing if anyone would receive it. Day 8. I am alive and stable. Have food, water, shelter. Weather is harsh but manageable. Local fauna avoided so far. Some close calls. I miss real coffee. I miss beds. I miss you all. Hope you are safe. Tell my family I am okay. We'll keep signal active. Kim out. In the ship above, Tala received the message. Tears formed in her eye stalks. Something that only happened when she was deeply moved. She sent a response hoping the beacon could receive. Doyen, we hear you. We are alive. Rescue is coming in 6 more days. You have done the impossible. You have survived where none of us could. Hold on, we are here. We are watching. You are not alone. The beacon's receiver was still too damaged. Doyen did not get the message. But Tala sent it anyway because she needed to tell him. And because she had learned something important about humans. They were not just tough. They were not just adaptable. They carried with. Day 10 brought rain, but not the violent storm of before. This was a steady rain that lasted for hours. Doyen sat in the entrance of his shelter and watched the water fall. He had built a gutter system from curved bark that caught rainwater and directed it into his clay pots. Clean water from the sky, free and pure. He used the time to work on projects inside the shelter. He was weaving baskets from plant fibers. They were crude but functional. One would hold gathered plants. Another would store tools. A third would keep dried meat organized. Order made life easier. It made survival less chaotic. His shelter had changed so much in 10 days that it barely looked like the same structure. The walls were thick and solid now. The floor was covered with dried grass and animal hides for insulation and comfort. He had even made a raised sleeping platform from branches lashed together. Sleeping off the ground kept him warmer and away from insects. In one corner, he had created a workshop area, stones for napping, cordage materials, half-finished projects. In another corner was his food storage, clay pots sealed with wax from a hive he had found, smoked meat hanging from the ceiling, dried plants in baskets. But his most important addition was something the aliens did not understand at first. He had made a small flute from a hollow reed. It produced simple, clear notes. In the evenings, he played it by the fire. The music was basic, but it filled the silence. It reminded him of home. Tala listened to the music through the audio feed. "He is creating culture," she said quietly. "Even here, even alone, he maintains the human need for art and music. This is what separates advanced intelligence from mere survival instinct." Vor was reading something on his screen. "I have been studying Earth's history. Human history. Do you know what they did when they first left their home continent? They brought music with them. They brought art. Even when they crossed deadly oceans and harsh deserts, they carried instruments and made paintings. They could not help it. It is fundamental to what they are. We have been thinking about this wrong," Nexum said slowly. "We thought survival was about physical adaptation. But humans survive because they adapt psychologically. They make hostile places feel like home. They create meaning where there should be only struggle. That is their real advantage." On the surface, Doyun put away his flute and checked his trap lines. He had expanded them to cover a wider area. He now had 12 traps set at strategic locations. 6 were for small game. 6 were more substantial, designed to catch the medium-sized predators that hunted the small game. He checked each one carefully, reset the ones that had been triggered, and collected 3 animals. 2 small ones and one that looked like a cross between a fox and a lizard. As he worked, he thought about his crew. Were they alive? The main ship had crashed far away. He had seen it go down on the horizon, trailing fire. His communication beacon sent signals, but he received nothing back. That might mean they were dead. Or it might mean his receiver was too damaged. He chose to believe the second option. Hope was a survival tool too. It kept you going when logic said to give up. Back at camp, Doyen did something new. He had been thinking about it for days. He took charcoal and made marks on the rock wall inside his shelter. Marks for each day. 10 marks now. Then he did something else. He wrote names: Tala, Nexum, Vor, Captain Reeves, all the crew members he remembered. Then he wrote words in Korean below them. "I will see you again." It was a promise to himself. An anchor. He would not just survive. He would survive with purpose. He would get back to them. That afternoon, Doyen heard a sound that made him stop working. It was electronic, a beep, coming from his communication beacon. He rushed to it and checked the display. It was receiving something. The signal was weak and broken, but it was there. He worked frantically to clean up the reception. His hands moved carefully, adjusting connections, bypassing damaged circuits. The signal cleared slightly. He could make out words. Alive. Rescue. 6 days. Hold on. 6 days. Rescue was 6 days away. Doyen felt something break inside him, but in a good way. Relief flooded through him. They were alive. Help was coming. He was not forgotten. He sent back a response immediately. Message received. "I am stable. Camp secure. Can hold out for 6 days. Longer if needed. Tell the crew I'm thinking of them." Kim out. In the ship above, celebration broke out. Tala's crystalline body flashed with joy colors. Nexum splashed in his tank. Even Vor made clicking sounds that passed for laughter among his species. "He did it," Nexum said. 10 days on a Class 9 death world, he actually did it. 6 more days, Tala said. Can he really hold out that long? They all looked at the monitoring screen. Doyen was sitting by his fire and he was smiling. Really smiling. For the first time since the crash. Yes, Vor said with certainty. Yes, he can. Over the next 2 days, Doyen focused on making his camp as self-sufficient as possible. He expanded his garden plot. He had been experimenting with transplanting local plants that seemed edible. Some had died. Some had thrived. He watered them carefully and watched them grow. If he had to stay longer, he would need more food sources. He also made improvements to his comfort. Using animal hides, he made a crude jacket. It was ugly and smelled terrible, but it was warm. He made better shoes from thicker hide wrapped around his boots. He made a hat to protect his head from the sun. On day 12, something unexpected happened. Doyen was working near his camp when he spotted movement in the sky. Birds, or at least bird-like creatures. They were large, with wingspans of 2 meters or more. They circled high above, riding the thermal currents. He watched them for a while, and then he had an idea. He went to his shelter and got his bow and an arrow. He had been practicing his archery every day. His accuracy was good now. But could he hit a moving target in the sky? He waited for one of the birds to fly lower. When it did, he drew and released in one smooth motion. The arrow flew. It missed, but not by much. The bird squawked and flew higher. Doyen smiled. It was possible. He would try again tomorrow. That evening, he worked on another project. He was trying to make a better water container. The clay pots were good but fragile. He had been thinking about waterproofing a basket. He melted wax from the hive he had found and painted it on the inside of a tightly woven basket. It took several layers, but eventually the basket held water without leaking. It was lighter than clay and would not break if dropped. The aliens watched his constant innovation with growing respect. He never stops improving, Tala said. Every day something new. A new technique, a new tool, a new solution. This is not just survival. This is engineering. This is science. This is art, all combined. I want to meet him, Nexum said suddenly. When we are rescued, I want to thank him in person. Thank him? Vor asked. For what? For teaching us, Nexum said. We thought we understood survival. We thought we understood adaptation. But watching him, I realized we knew nothing. We have lived our entire lives depending on technology. He has shown us what life was like for our ancestors, before we had ships and tools and climate-controlled habitats. He has shown us what intelligence really means when stripped of all advantages. Tala agreed. I have been recording everything. Every action, every technique, every decision. This will be studied for generations. Human survival methodology. It will change how we train our own crews. On day 13, Doyen woke to find frost on the ground again. The weather was cycling through extremes. Hot days, freezing nights, rain, then dry heat. But his shelter handled it all. He had built it to withstand anything the planet could throw at him. He spent the day hunting and managed to bring down one of the large birds with his bow. It was a difficult shot, but he made it. The bird provided more meat than he had eaten in 3 days. He cleaned it carefully and cooked it over his fire. The meat was tough but good. As he ate, he thought about what he would do when he got back. First, a real shower. Hot water for as long as he wanted. Then food, real food. A burger or pasta. Or his mother's kimchi stew. He could almost taste it. Then he thought about something else. He had changed here. In 13 days, he had become different. Stronger in some ways. More patient. More aware of the world around him. He had learned things about himself he had not known. He had learned he could survive anything if he kept his head clear and worked the problem. He had learned that loneliness was painful but not fatal. He had learned that humans were tougher than even they realized. That night, he sent another message to the ship. Day 13. 3 days until rescue. I am ready. Camp is secure. Health is good. I have learned a lot here. Looking forward to seeing you all again. And to a real meal. Kim out, Tala responded immediately. 3 days, Doyen. 3 days and you are going home. The whole crew sends their respect. You have done something incredible. Hold on just a little longer. This time the message got through. Doyen read it on his flickering screen and felt his eyes burn with tears. He was not ashamed. Tears were just another human response, release of pressure, expression of emotion. He let them fall, then wiped them away and smiled. 3 more days. He could do 3 more days. He had done 13. 3 was nothing. He played his flute that night, the notes carrying across the dark landscape. It was not a sad song. It was a song of triumph. He had won. Day 14 arrived with clear skies and mild temperatures. Doyen sat outside his shelter and watched the twin suns rise. 2 more days until rescue. He had made it. Barring disaster, he would survive this. He spent the morning organizing his camp. It was a habit now. Keep things ordered, know where everything is. Tools in one place, food in another. Fire maintained, water stored. These routines had kept him alive. They had given structure to days that could have dissolved into chaos. He was checking his trap lines when he felt it. A tremor in the ground. Then another. Not an earthquake. Something else. He looked toward the western hills and saw smoke rising. Not from a fire, from the ground itself. Volcanic activity. The geological surveys had mentioned it. Vex 7 was unstable. Active volcanoes dotted the landscape, but they had been quiet during his stay. Until now, Doyen watched the smoke grow thicker. It was several kilometers away, but it was spreading. He could smell sulfur on the wind now. The ground shook again, harder this time. He made a quick decision. If the activity increased, his current camp could be in danger. He needed a backup location. He spent the next hour scouting. He found another overhang about half a kilometer away on higher ground. Not as good as his main shelter, but defendable. He marked the location in his mind and returned to camp. If he needed to move fast, he would know where to go. In orbit, the aliens had seen the volcanic activity. Alarms sounded in the damaged ship. No, Tala said, her voice filled with horror. Not now. Not when he is so close. The eruption is spreading, Vor reported, checking the sensors. Toxic gas will reach his camp within hours. The temperature in that zone will rise significantly. He needs to move. Can we contact him? Nexum asked urgently. The communication beacon is damaged, Tala said. We can send, but will he receive in time? She sent the message anyway, her crystalline form pulsing with stress. Doyen, volcanic activity detected near your position. Recommend immediate relocation to safer ground. Move to high elevation, away from the western sector. Respond immediately. Down on the surface, Doyen's beacon beeped. He ran to it and read the flickering message. His face went still. Volcanic activity. He had already seen it, but confirmation from orbit meant it was serious. They had better sensors than he did. He looked at his camp. 13 days of work. Everything he had built. But survival meant making hard choices. He could not take everything. He had to prioritize. Doyen moved with practice speed. He grabbed his bow and arrows. His knife. His fire starter. The clay pots with food. His water containers. The thermal blanket. The communication beacon. Everything else he would have to leave. He took one last look at the shelter that had kept him alive. The walls he had built with his hands, the fire pit that had burned every night, the marks on the wall counting his days. Then he turned and walked away. The backup location was uphill, which meant hard walking with a load. But Doyen had been surviving on limited food for 2 weeks. His body was lean and hard now. He carried the weight and kept moving. Behind him, the smoke grew thicker. The smell of sulfur became stronger. He reached the new overhang as the first wave of hot air rolled up from below. The temperature jumped 10 degrees in minutes. Doyen set down his supplies and immediately began building a basic shelter. He had no time for the careful construction of before. This needed to be fast and functional. He piled rocks to make walls. He used his thermal blanket as a roof. He built a fire pit and got a fire started using his precious store of dry tinder. The smoke from the volcano was making the air hazy now. He wet a piece of cloth and tied it over his nose and mouth. It would filter some of the worst particles. The aliens watched in tense silence. He evacuated in time, Nexum said. He saw the danger and adapted. Again. Look at his biometrics, Tala said. His heart rate is elevated but steady. He is stressed but not panicking. How does he stay so calm? Training, Vor said simply. And experience. And something else. Something we do not have. He has absolute confidence in his ability to handle whatever comes. That is not arrogance. That is the result of succeeding against odds again and again and again. The volcanic activity continued through the day. The western valley where Doyen's camp had been was now covered in a haze of toxic gas. The temperature there had risen to over 60 degrees Celsius. If he had stayed, he would have died, but he had not stayed. He had moved, and he had survived. Again. That night, Doyen sat by his small fire in his basic shelter and sent a message. Relocated due to volcanic activity. New camp established on high ground. All essential supplies preserved. Still operational, still alive. 2 days until rescue. I will be here. Kim out. Relief flooded through the ship above. He is okay, Tala said, and her voice shook with emotion. He is still okay. Day 15 brought a new challenge of a different kind. Doyen woke to find a large predator near his new camp. Not just any predator, the apex predator he had seen days before, the scaled creature the size of a bear. And it was not alone. There were 3 of them. They had smelled his food. They had followed the scent up the hill. Now they circled his position, assessing the threat. Doyen stood slowly, his spear in one hand, his bow in the other. For a long moment, nothing moved. The predators watched him. He watched them. The fire crackled between them. Then one of the creatures took a step forward. Doyen knew he could not fight three of them. He was good, but not that good. He needed to make them leave without a fight. He grabbed a burning branch from the fire and thrust it toward the approaching predator. The flames flared bright in the dim morning light. The creature stopped. Fire, the ancient enemy of all animals. Doyen took a step forward, holding the torch high. "Get back," he shouted. "This is my place." The predator hesitated. Then Doyen did something unexpected. He grabbed a clay pot of water and threw it on the fire. Steam and smoke exploded upward in a huge cloud. The sound was like an explosion. The predators jumped back, startled. Doyen used the moment. He charged forward, shouting, waving the torch, making himself as big and loud and dangerous as possible. The predators turned and ran. They were powerful, but they were animals, and animals had instincts. Instincts said fire, and loud noises meant danger. Better to hunt elsewhere. When they were gone, Doyen allowed himself to shake. That had been close. Very close, but he had won. Not with strength, but with intelligence, with understanding of animal behavior, with the human gift for thinking past instinct. The aliens had watched the entire encounter with mounting panic, then amazement. "He bluffed them," Nexum said in disbelief. 3 apex predators. "He bluffed them." "More than that," Tala said. "He understood their psychology. He knew exactly what would make them retreat. That is not just survival. That is mastery." The rest of day 15 passed quietly. Doyen rebuilt his fire, reinforced his shelter, and waited. One more day. Just one more day. That evening, he carved something into a flat stone. A message. "Doyen Kim survived here for 15 days. I built shelter, found food and water, and lived. To whoever finds this, humans are tougher than you think. We always find a way." He placed the stone at the entrance to his old camp, below where the volcanic gases had receded. It was a marker. A memorial. Proof that he had been here. Day 16 arrived. Rescue day. Doyen woke before dawn and prepared. He gathered all his supplies. He made sure his fire was visible from above. He activated his communication beacon to maximum power, draining the last of its charge. Then he waited. The ship appeared at mid-morning. It came down from orbit like a falling star, bright and fast. Doyen stood in the open and waved his arms. The ship circled once, then descended toward a flat area near his camp. The landing gear touched down. The engines quieted. A door opened. And Doyen saw humans for the first time in 16 days. Captain Hyunwoo Park stepped out, wearing an environmental suit. Behind him came Lieutenant Ji-won Choi, the medic. They walked toward him quickly. When they reached him, Captain Park stopped and saluted. "Corporal Kim, good work staying alive." Doyen returned the salute, then smiled. "Just following training, sir. Though I have to say I am really ready for a hot meal and a bed." "Medical check first," Lieutenant Choi said, scanning him with her equipment. "You have lost weight, dehydration, minor infections. But overall, you are in remarkably good condition." "I drank a lot of boiled water," Doyen said, "and I avoided the things that looked poisonous." More people emerged from the ship. Crew members, medics, scientists. And then Doyen saw them. Tala, Nexum, and Vor, moving carefully down the ramp in their environmental suits. They had been rescued too. Tala approached slowly. Through her suit, Doyen could see her crystalline form pulsing with colors. She stopped in front of him and extended a sensory stalk in what he recognized as a greeting. "Doyen Kim," she said, "we watched you. Every day. Everything you did. We could not believe it. We still cannot believe it." "I am just glad you are all safe," Doyen said. "How is the rest of the crew?" "Alive," Tala said. "Thanks to your engineering suggestions that you sent us. The water container design saved Nexum's life." Doyen looked surprised. "They worked?" "They worked," Nexum bubbled from his suit's speaker. "You were the one in danger and you helped us. We will not forget that. We need to document everything," Vor clicked excitedly. "Your camp, your techniques, your tools. This is historic. This is data that will